Hashtag the sunshine and the shadow. The real life of Doris Day. Picture the whitest, brightest smile you've ever seen. Picture a woman in a yellow sundress laughing on a Technicolor beach, singing about how Sarah, whatever will be. That's the Doris Day you think you know. America's sweetheart. The eternal virgin next door. The woman so wholesome that Oscar Levant once joked he knew her before she was a virgin. That's funny, except it's also kind of the whole problem. Because the real Doris Day lived a life so strange, so dramatic, and honestly so dark in places that if you pitched it as a movie, a studio executive would have said, tone it down. Nobody will believe this. So tonight, let's meet the real one, the girl behind the sunshine. She was born Doris Mary in Kappelhof in Cincinnati, Ohio, in 1922. German-American family, Catholic upbringing, a father who was a music teacher, and, plot twist, also had an affair with her mother's best friend, which ended the marriage. So even chapter 1 has a little crack in the wholesome frame. Young Doris wanted to be a dancer, not a singer. She was actually good enough that she and a partner were headed to Hollywood to chase it. And then, on a rainy night in October 1937, the car she was riding in was hit by a train at a railroad crossing. Her leg was shattered. Doctors weren't sure she'd walk normally again, let alone dance. So dancing career, gone. But while she was stuck at home recovering, bored out of her mind, she started singing along to the radio, just to pass the time. Her mother noticed she had a real voice and got her singing lessons instead. Which means, and I want you to sit with this for a second, Doris Day, one of the most famous entertainers of the 20th century, only became a singer because a train nearly killed her. Hollywood's biggest sunbeam was launched by a train wreck. That's the first crack of lightning under all that sunshine. Asterisk. Here's where the story stops being charming and starts being genuinely unsettling. At 17, she married a trombone player named Al Jordan. And by most accounts from people who knew them, Jordan was violent, controlling, jealous, physically abusive, the kind of man who would allegedly hold a gun on her. She was pregnant with their son Terry during some of the worst of it. She left him, good. But think about that contrast for a second. The woman who'd become known worldwide as the poster child of innocent, giggly, girl-next-door romance. Her actual first experience of marriage was fear. Husband number 2, a saxophonist named George Weidler, lasted less than a year. And then comes husband number 3, Martin Melcher. This is the one you need to lean in for. Melcher married her in 1951, adopted her son Terry, and became her manager and producer. On the surface, golden era. He built her into a movie star, produced her biggest hits, built a business empire around Doris Day as a brand, records, films, real estate, oil wells. For 17 years, Martin Melcher was the architect of her career. Here's the eerie part. He died suddenly in 1968. And within days, while Doris was still grieving, she discovered, through her son Terry going through the estate, that Melcher and his business partner had secretly squandered almost her entire fortune. Reports put it around $20 million gone. Bad investments, oil wells that never produced anything, failing motels, and worse. He'd committed her without her knowledge to a television show she had never agreed to do, The Doris Day Show. She found out about her own new job from a lawyer after her husband's funeral. She wasn't just broke, she was in debt to the IRS. The wholesome, beloved, financially untouchable movie star was secretly bankrupt and had been lied to for years by the man sleeping next to her every night. Imagine spending 17 years trusting someone completely, only to have the truth surface the week you buried him. That's not a Hollywood divorce story. That's closer to a ghost story. The kind where the haunting isn't a spirit, it's paperwork. She sued the estate's lawyer for fraud and eventually won a judgment worth over $20 million. Though because of separate bankruptcies, she reportedly only ever collected a fraction of that. And to dig herself out, she did the show Melcher had signed her up for without asking. 5 seasons, she turned his betrayal into her own survival. Now here's the detail that always makes people's skin crawl a little when they hear it for the first time. Doris Day's son, Terry Melcher, was a successful young record producer in the 1960s. He helped shape the California sound, worked with the Byrds, was tight with the Beach Boys. In the mid-1960s, Terry lived in a rented house up in the hills above Los Angeles at 1050 Cielo Drive. A struggling musician named Charles Manson wanted Terry to help him land a record deal. Terry passed. Different accounts say Manson visited the house looking for him more than once. Terry moved out. New tenants moved in. The actress Sharon Tate and her husband, director Roman Polanski. In August 1969, members of the Manson family murdered Sharon Tate and 4 others at that house. Some of the accounts and testimony that came out afterward suggested the location may not have been random, that some in the group associated the address with Terry Melcher, the man who turned Manson down. Terry reportedly lived with intense fear and guilt for years afterward, at times sleeping with a gun nearby, convinced the killers had been aiming for him and simply found different victims in his old house. So somewhere in the real, factual biography of America's sweetheart, there is a direct, documented thread connecting her only son's front door to one of the most notorious crime scenes in American history. Nobody puts that in the highlight reel, but it's there. All right, we need to come up for air, because Doris Day's life wasn't only shadows, it was also genuinely very funny. She hated the Virgin nickname so much she used to joke about it herself, saying she knew where babies came from. She just preferred playing characters who didn't. She turned down the lead in The Graduate, a role that made Anne Bancroft famous, because she found the script vulgar. Imagine being offered one of the most iconic roles in film history and going, no thank you to Racy, and then going home to feed your 60 rescue cats. Because here's the thing, she meant it about the animals. In her later decades in Carmel, California, this woman who'd sold out arenas and won Golden Globes ran an actual, functioning animal sanctuary out of her own property. She owned a hotel, the Cypress Inn specifically because it welcomed dogs, and she'd reportedly let guest pets roam the lobby like they owned the place. Neighbors said her house sometimes smelled more like a kennel than a movie star's mansion, and she said she preferred it that way. She also famously almost never gave interviews or made public appearances in her final 40 years. The most photographed woman of the 1950s and 60s essentially vanished from public life by choice, living quietly with her dogs, occasionally popping up for an animal rights cause, and then disappearing again. There's something almost funny about that. Spend 3 decades as the most visible woman on Earth, then spend the next 4 decades hiding from cameras on purpose. Doris Day died in May 2019 at 97 years old at her home in Carmel, surrounded by close friends, having specifically requested no funeral, no memorial service, and no headstone. She wanted to disappear quietly, the same way she'd been trying to for 40 years. And maybe that's the real ending to this story. A woman who was sold to the public as pure sunshine, safe, simple, unthreatening, while privately surviving domestic abuse, a husband's secret financial betrayal that bankrupted her, and a brush with one of history's most infamous murder cases through her own son's front door. She wasn't fragile. She was tougher than the character she played. She rebuilt a fortune out of a stranger's fraud, and she spent her final decades exactly how she wanted: dogs, quiet, and no interviews required. So next time someone tells you Doris Day was just a wholesome old movie star who sang about whatever will be, you can tell them, yeah, and it very nearly wasn't. That's the story. Thanks for listening, and hug your dog tonight. Doris would have wanted that.